And the story of this show giving me oh so much sexual frustration continues with Lan this week. So, that's great. This show just makes me horny on main all the damn time. With that being said, everyone, hello and welcome to my review of the latest episode of The Wheel of Time, the penultimate episode of Season 1, Episode 7, The Dark Along the Ways, The Darkness Along the Ways, The Dark Along the Ways, The Dark Along the Ways. I'm a freshly YouTuber, I know what I'm about to say. Regardless though, yes, I'm going to be breaking down Episode 7. For those of you who don't know, who are new to my reviews, I am someone who has not read the books yet, so please no spoilers for the books down in the comments below without a warning, so at least I can skip those if you want to talk about spoilers from the book. And obviously my perspective in this review is from the perspective of someone who has not read the book, so just know that going into all of this. And thank you to everyone who's been following me along on this journey, because it's been a lot of fun to just enjoy your enthusiasm for me watching this show as a non-book reader. I know I said that a bunch, but seriously, like, reading all those comments every week is just a ton of fun. Regardless, let's actually get into this episode, but I just wanted to put that up front, because I wanted to say that first, because this episode for me, I think, was probably my least favorite episode of the series. To be fair, I do think this episode did a few things well, such as building out a little bit more of the world of the Wheel of Time, as well as doing a at least admirable job of coming up with a reason and sort of retroactively dealing with the fact that the actor who played Matt, Barney Harris, left the show kind of randomly and broke contract for whatever personal reasons that he was dealing with that we obviously don't know, and should obviously respect his privacy on the matter. For the many of you last week, I talked about Matt not coming with him, and I thought that was actually a cool idea for the show to do, and I didn't really realize that that was the episode that Barney Harris probably left the show, hence why they had to sort of put that in there, even though it didn't make entirely a lot of sense for Moraine. And this episode did a good job, at least justifying that choice that the writers kind of had to hastily shove into the script after the fact. And it doesn't work perfectly to my mind, but at least it does an admirable job, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. But I think the bigger frustration that I have with this episode is there's just a lot of melodrama surrounding relationships that we'll talk about going into this that I just found entirely frustrating and deeply disappointing, and I'm just kind of tired and over in pretty much any story that I see it in, and it really ground this episode to a halt for me. And it's kind of sad considering how much I love next episode and the fact that we're going into the season finale, that there was such a dip between the two, and hopefully the season finale will bring it back up. But let's get into it and get into some of the specifics here. Starting off with a positive, though, that opening battle with that one pregnant lady just murdering a bunch of men. I think she's fighting on that volcano right near the White Tower. I thought the choreography of this whole segment was amazing. I mean, not only is it awesome just seeing a pregnant woman just kick ass and just beat up a ton of guys, but I talked about in, I think, episode 3, there was that big battle in the woods that I thought was good, but not particularly staggering in terms of its visuals. This one nailed its visuals hands down, and I just was like, whew, this is some of the best choreography I've seen on TV, and I was damn impressed just seeing that whole sequence, and you could really feel how brutal it was. So, great opening, and I like that it comes back around towards the end of the episode, but a strong opening for the episode. Then we return back to our heroes, picking up right where we left off last episode, where Matt had sort of left them all behind. Again, we know that the actor sort of left the show randomly at this point. So this scene where we see our character sort of wrestle with the fact, like, Matt left us. What do we do? Do we go back to him? Should we be more worried for him? And also Moraine even saying to Lan, it's like, hey, if he had come with us, if he is the dragon and he's already doubting himself, he could get pulled to the dark side, and we do not want the dragon being pulled to the dark side. Now, obviously, this kind of defeats a lot of the intention that Moraine has going into this whole episode with, like, she's trying to bring everyone to the eye of the world in order to fight the Dark One and trying to beat him right there, right then. And so this sort of justification for her being like, well, if he is the dragon, we'll ignore Matt because he could be corrupted, is not a perfect solution. But again, since the writers had to add this in here, as many people told me, I think that that's the best you could do to justify that, and I think it works well. And I liked seeing that this conflict of Matt leaving the show wasn't just sort of like a sort of one-off, like, yeah, I guess he's just gone now, we're not going to really deal with that, but that it was something that cropped up throughout this episode, sometimes in frustrating ways, but at least I appreciate that the writers decided to take that challenge head on. And I'm assuming, since we already know that the cat role has been recast, that we'll see Matt show up in future episodes. But I do at least enjoy that the writers, said, all right, this is the thing we have to deal with. Let's take it head on and address it instead of just trying to sweep it under the rug. And I think that that's an admirable feat for any writers to have to do at any point. And I think, while not perfect, was definitely the best they could have done with the situation. I also liked learning a little bit more about the ways here. This entire segment was very, very creepy, and I was really enjoying pretty much all of it. Again, a lot of world building here. We get to learn about this apparent, like, Armin Shin. I'm probably saying his name wrong. I wanted to say Armin Shimmerman, who played Quark in Deep Space Nine. Again, probably saying his name wrong, but obviously this, like, fact that if you use your powers in the ways, then you start to hear voices from this dark creature who just gives you information and, like, psychologically attacks you, as we see as they try to escape the ways after they get attacked by a Trolloc who is also using the ways. I thought that was entirely creepy, and I'm very excited and curious to learn more about that, but it was just this eldritch horror idea that I think was super cool. I love Moraine just saying, he's going to talk to you, don't listen to him, like, just sort of nonchalantly as they just rush across. Getting very, like, Mordor vibes from all of this segment, like them going in and trying to, like, find their way out. Very, very much felt like the Mines of Moria, not Mordor, Mines of Moria here. Also, we get Loyal sort of talking about the Waystone that the Ogier someone destroyed and attacked, which is very, very creepy as well. Again, just creepy vibes throughout all of this. But obviously they get attacked, and Night and Nynaeve does a full Gandalf, like, you shall not pass to these, like, little blight things coming at them, and they eventually escape into a new country, which I also thought was really cool. Again, I liked this whole segment of getting to know this new land, which I believe the city was called Faldara. Again, probably mispronouncing it, but it was just a cool world to see. It very much reminded me of kind of the desert world that we saw in, like, Game of Thrones and Sand Snakes people. But I also liked that there was also a mixture of Asian culture in here as well. We definitely learned that Lan comes from here as well, and so I thought that was very, very cool. I'm not someone to speak on the usage of Asian culture and which Asian cultures. I honestly don't know. It could be a mixture of a bunch of different Asian cultures. I'm sure many people from various different communities could probably speak to that better than I can. From my look at it, I thought it looked cool, but again, I don't have the ability and tools to dissect that. So I'd love to hear people down in the comments thoughts. If you thought that was done well, was done badly, I'd be definitely curious to hear that, and how that relates to the book as well in terms of representing this culture here. But I also liked meeting the ruler of the society. He was very much like, yes, I know, I can deal with the Aes Sedai, da-da-da. Moraine's like, okay, no, I have other things to tell you. Can you shut up for just a second? I like showing Moraine's power and, like, ability to stand up to rulers like this, but also the fact that there is some tension, but also good, positive relations between the Aes Sedai and this country. So all of that was very interesting to see a little bit more of the politics and building out of the politics of this world. Also, I liked Moraine going to talk to the other Aes Sedai there, the Grey Aes Sedai, who I learned from Daniel Green, who I absolutely love as a YouTuber, explaining that the Grey Aja are sort of the politicians of the Aes Sedai. All of that was cool to see, and her saying, oh, I want the Red Aja to go after Matt, which was an interesting choice. I'm surprised she didn't ask for, like, Blue Aja or something like that, but obviously the Red Aja will go after him with will to get him, especially considering that he might have powers and they might want to gentle him and all that stuff. So, interesting choice. Again, I like the, at least, justification and usage of the actor leaving the show to at least inform some of the stories here. Good move by the writers as best they can. At this point, we also see a mysterious figure exit the Waygate, which I would assume, as we later see Perrin almost seeing him a few moments later, is Podden Fane, the traitor that we saw back in the Two Rivers city, who was assumed dead, but obviously, if you remember watching that episode, he sort of slipped away. So I'm very curious to see how he's going to show up. He's clearly got a bigger role to play in this story that I'm very, very curious about what his role in all of this is going to be. So up until this point, I generally enjoyed the episode. Till this moment where everything really just started to go downhill, because we have Moraine going to a bar and she meets another a person with powers who can kind of see the future and get sort of readings of people, and her sort of reading the group of our heroes and seeing different things about them, like Perrin obviously having sort of wolf powers, as we've sort of seen hinted at throughout the series so far, and other people just having these auras about them, and also this hint that Moraine will be brought down by the Armelin Seat, which will be interesting considering that they are lovers. So I think that that's all very, very fascinating to see going on here. But then, once we get further on, we have our heroes meeting back up in their bed chambers, and Moraine being honest with them and says, if any of you come to the Eye of the World who is not the dragon, you will die. And they start to have this argument amongst themselves after she leaves that is generally makes sense to me. I mean, Night and Nynaeve's being like, hey, I don't want to go because screw the Aes Sedai, but then Egwene sort of arguing is like, look, this is the right thing to do. Even if we all die, if one of us survives, if one of us can defeat the Dark One, we would do it. We would do it to protect others. This is just an extension continuation of what we were trying to do since we left the Two Rivers. All of that makes sense to me. It's a conversation that's like kind of predictable and one that you would expect happening, but at least makes sense. What starts to frustrate me deeply is when this descends into romance melodrama, which I don't know if it is in the book or not, but Perrin sort of having a thing for Egwene and Rand getting all huffy about it, and Night and Nynaeve sort of calling it out, and Rand getting angry at Perrin for all of that, just felt so forced and melodramatic and over the top. And I see it in like CW shows where it's just this forced conflict of like, oh, I'm in love with her, oh, I'm just gonna be jealous, and it just really disappointed me, especially since just a few scenes later Egwene goes to see Rand, and I was very pissed off again when Rand's like, well, I didn't go to apologize to you because I know you'd come to me. It's like, screw you, Rand, come on, go and talk to your girlfriend when you're kind of being a little jerk about being all jealous and huffy about it, because she's clearly with you, as we saw way back in the ways when you two were sleeping together, like lying next to each other. Like, come on, clearly you're together and caring about each other, so why are you suddenly getting all jealous? It was just frustrating. And then him just doubling down and being like, well, you come to see me, was frustrating. And then they immediately dismiss the whole jealousy subplot because Rand's like, I knew you would never have feelings for parents. So I was like, so why were you upset in the first place just to create this forced division between you and your friends? It was just entirely frustrating, this entire sequence, and it just really dropped the ball, in my opinion, and I was just really disappointed to see that here. Hopefully this is just the last time you see an element of this melodramatic subplot come up, because I did not need it, and there are better ways to form divisions between friends other than this like forced CW melodrama. And by the way, I'm not knocking people who enjoy CW shows. I have watched many of them. I still watch many of them. I'm just saying that it's a kind of formulaic and something that I would like to see something like The Wheel of Time do better than. And, I enjoy my CW, trashy shows just like anyone else, but I think Wheel of Time should elevate that, and it definitely did not do that here. However, this does get me to a positive of the episode, because I do like Night and Nynaeve following Lan and seeing his family. And I like this kind of found family idea that Lan has. Obviously, as a queer person, that definitely reads true to me. And I like seeing the mixed family there. I mean, many different people of many different races in that family. And Night and Nynaeve started standing on the outside of that, wanting to be part of a family because she's never really had that. And Lan inviting her in and sort of building that burgeoning relationship, I thought was absolutely wonderful and a very emotionally resonant one for me in particular. And I thought worked well. And then Lan opening up about Night and Nynaeve about how his family was killed and how these were the people that cared for him. And then Night and Nynaeve and Lan getting it on, and I'm like, hot damn, Lan, he's got the full ab V. Your girl loves nothing more than a full ab V. Like, give him a beard and I would have been just dead in that moment, because that was hot. It was hot. But then we get a reveal of Rand basically having a vision that he is the Dragon Reborn from something that he heard back in the ways, and he gets kind of a confirmation from the future reading girl who says that, she had a reading of his father, who had been the one to deliver the baby of that pregnant woman we saw at the opening of the episode, which was interesting to see, and showed that his father, or his adoptive father, I should say, was a very caring guy, even though he was, a soldier at one point. And so I like learning a little bit more about his history and the fact that, Rand sort of takes up the Dragon Reborn mantle. Now, if this is an official confirmation that Rand is the Dragon Reborn, it certainly feels that way. It makes sense to me, because all the other characters seem to have other crap going on, like Night and Nynaeve, Egwene, Perrin, even Matt seem to definitely have, like, other arcs, whereas Rand just seemed like, I'm jealous, boy, who's just the plain normal protagonist kind of dude. And I'm just like, of course, plain boring protagonist kind of dude needs some sort of chosen one narrative to make him somewhat interesting, because otherwise I didn't dislike Rand, but he was definitely not particularly fascinating as compared to the other characters. So giving him something like the Dragon Reborn at least fleshes out his arc. And of course he's like the cis straight white dude protagonist, so of course he's going to be the chosen one, especially in stories based on something from the 80s. Not knocking you, my cis straight white boys. I love you, I adore you. It's just sort of the typical trope that we see with stories written at this era. So I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. We'll see Rand be the Dragon Reborn. And obviously having that sort of like as many chosen one stories go, again, this gets kind of repetitive, and I'm a little bit like, I wasn't as frustrated by the other parts of Rand's story this arc, but I was like, all right, this makes sense. He's like, I gotta take on the thing alone because I'm the chosen one. And then the whole story is going to be about like, no, we're family and we will stand together and be together and we are united together. It's not a story, the arc, that I find particularly revolutionary, but again, books based on like from the 80s, and I don't dislike it. It didn't frustrate me. It's just sort of typical for these types of stories, and just made it a little bit worse in the light of the other melodramatic stuff going on with Rand. But obviously Rand goes to Moraine and reveals to her that he believes that he's the Dragon Reborn, and the two of them set off to the Eye of the World by themselves to take on the Dark One. But obviously our friends are like, no, they can't go alone, we need to go rescue them, and that'll probably be the final episode of the show. Here's my prediction for the final episode. Rand and Moraine go to confront the Dark One. They fail in defeating the Dark One, and they're both about to die, but then because Rand's friends show up to save him, they are able to get away using their powers, and they all level up together but don't defeat the Dark One, but they learn the power of family and friendship, and that's where we're going to end our first season. That's my prediction. Hopefully the Wheel of Time can take it in another direction, but that's my sort of guess basing on the arc of this episode. So ultimately at the end of the episode, there were certainly elements that I definitely liked about this, again, especially the world building, especially furthering some of the relationships like between Night and Eve and Lan, but the rest of this episode definitely felt like it was setting up fairly stereotypical arcs that I've seen in numerous other fantasy series, which is kind of boring. And then on top of that, you toss in some of this forced division in order to separate our heroes a little bit so they can come back together in the finale in ways that felt really, really forced and over the top, and you can just see the clear, like, forcing of this melodrama to get us there was kind of disappointing. So a very, very uneven episode overall for me, and probably my least favorite episode of the show so far. But hopefully the next episode, the season finale, can turn that around, because I've been enjoying everything else so far, and every show's got to have the one episode that was just a bit of a clunker. So I'm enthusiastic and excited going into the season finale for this show. But that's my review of the penultimate episode of The Wheel of Time. Did you like my review of it? Do you disagree with me? Did you like this episode a whole lot more? In which case, I'm power to you. I'm excited to hear you say that. But beyond all of that, I'd love to hear all your comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, for those of you who do not subscribe to my main channel, I just released a video yesterday on sex in Star Trek. It's a literal movie, 2.5 hours long, so it's a little bit hard to get into, but it is a video that I'm so incredibly proud of. I think it's one of my best works that I've ever done, and obviously it is made to be welcoming to anyone who has not seen Star Trek, so even if you are not a Star Trek fan, I would highly recommend you watch it, because it talks about a lot of things when it comes to gender, sex, race, when we talk about sex in science fiction. And I think, again, it's a video I'm very proud of, so please check that out if you have not gotten the chance. It's over on my main channel, Jessie Gender. But beyond all of that, I just thank you for being here. I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.